Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about something that maybe a lot of people out there don't realize. Because, I am very, very well known for promoting full body training, particularly for novice lifters, particularly for people with limited schedules, limited recovery, things like that. I tend to promote the full body 3 day a week, and in some few cases, full body twice a week, only for people with certain life schedules. And the thing is, the overwhelming majority of my clients, and by the majority I mean all but two, run up or lower 4 day a week programs. Now, is it because they're all advanced lifters? No. They actually come from a pretty varied number of people. Some of them come from varied backgrounds. Some of them are competitive athletes who are intermediates going on advanced. Some of them are late novices who've stalled. Some of them want to lose body fat. Some want to gain pure muscle. Some are recompositioning. But the fact of the matter is I run all of them on that. And I think that might create some confusion for some people, because some people would say, well, why, when you've promoted so much full body stuff? Well, the reason for that, simply put, full body is harder to mess up. It is harder to mess up your total training volume, training frequency, and exercise selection when you're training full body 3 days a week, because you're going to be forced to use bigger exercises. It's going to be hard to train with excessive volume, and you're never going to have too low a frequency. You're never going to have this, well, I only got in and trained my legs once this week, nonsense like that, right? It tends to eliminate those problems. But when you're dealing with people who are under a watchful eye and they're under the care of a coach who can program their individual volume, who can program their individual exercises, program the amount of weight they're using, 4 day a week becomes a more valuable tool in that case. And the reason I say that is that, generally speaking, the majority of the time, there's very, very little evidence to suggest that anyone but ranked novices gets a very real benefit from training, say, a muscle group more than twice a week, unless they simply need much, much higher training volumes, right? Now, do I have people who I program some smaller lifts every day? Sure. Do I have smaller lifts I do every day? Sure. But generally speaking, usually around twice a week is going to be very, very close to the optimal training volume for the non-novice. And when I say novice, I mean the textbook definition of a novice, not even the Jason Blaha definition of a novice. If you've been training a few months really hard, right? Now, if you only trained your upper body, that doesn't count, because you still have novice legs. So we find that that's usually closer to ideal. Number two, we can get more total training volume in, with more specialization on exercises that will help with various weak points. Weak point training is usually useless for people who can't identify their own weak points, which, again, the majority of people out there coming for information, you don't know what your weak points are. You might just say, hey, I want bigger guns, brah. I want bigger biceps. But you can't really identify your weaknesses, because number one, you probably have some sort of body dysmorphia. Not uncommon, extremely common, particularly for anyone who watches stuff on the internet. That alone will give you body dysmorphia. You see a bunch of genetic freaks who pop trend and eat Anavar like it's candy while claiming all natty, brah. That will absolutely create problems in your own self-view. You see maybe the size of their biceps, and since your biceps aren't the same size as a guy who has 35 pounds of lean tissue on you, you think that you got small arms. You got to obsess over them biceps, brah. So, part of our issue. Number two, most of the people who are doing that aren't qualified to diagnose their own weaknesses from a strength perspective. So, what good is weak point training? Not any good to them. But when you're under the watchful eye of a coach can assess your weak points. He can plug in a lot more volume for your weak points, right? I have clients now who'll tell you, man, Jason makes me do 20 sets of rows every week. Yeah, I do. I have a client or two that for a phase, like a month, we're doing 20 sets of rows every week. People would say, well, that's ridiculous. That's excessive. Well, for you it is, and it probably is. For that client, it wasn't. That's what they needed. That's what they needed. But therein lies the difference. We can plug in true weak point training on a 4-day upper lower. We also have pretty much the ability to train people completely to their absolute maximum recoverable volume. Now, when they say something like that, people say, well, why stop there? Why not do 6-day a week upper lower? Why not do this? Why not do that? Because we come back over to that original point. There's a reason most of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the world use a 4-day a week upper lower. Exactly the reasons I just pointed out. Very rarely, other than some elite athletes with very specialized needs, very rarely does the non-advanced lifter see significant benefits from training a muscle more than twice a week. And I'm not talking about the exception to the rule, we're talking about the rule. Yes, there are exceptions to that rule. They're individual exceptions. In some cases, it's not even the muscle group so much as the movement pattern. Right? There might be a movement pattern. You might have a lifter who needs to deadlift 4 days a week. Probably not. Maybe bench press 4 days a week. Or maybe they need that movement pattern practice for whatever reason. Probably not a tissue hypertrophy reason, though. So we have that situation, and then we look at the total volume. Well, you can push maximum volume in 2 sessions. In other words, if you have a lifter who you legitimately think they need more than 20 work sets, and if you really think about a lot of these guys who are talking about going beyond that, those are not work sets. Because we know exceeding 20 work sets a week usually causes less muscle growth. The data is pretty clear on that when they're limit sets, right? And more than 10 in a session. Well, we come over to that point. Only for specific muscle groups are you ever going to exceed 20 per week. And that would come from splitting it into 2 sessions. And you're never going to do that for every muscle group in any lifter's body. That would be ludicrous unless they're blasting a lot of gear. And if they're blasting a lot of gear, there's probably better stuff you can do than doing that. So if we can get 10 quality sets twice a week, why do we need to change the frequency beyond that? Right? It becomes pointless. Then we come back over of the other benefit. If you need to run any sort of concurrent training because you need to train 2 different training modalities in a week that could have cross interference with each other, twice a week does that. In other words, we could do squats twice a week with 2 different performance elements. Whether it's high rep work versus max work or max work versus speed work, we can do all that. We can separate those modalities to do concurrent training in the week with twice a week. We don't have to go to 3 times to do that, and we can't do it with 1. It works very, very well. Works very well. It gives you all the flexibility you need for concurrent type trainings. It gives you all the flexibility you need for total training volume because you can take any given muscle and in terms of limit sets, let's say limit sets. We'll count limit sets as any set that gives you at least 4 quality reps. It's anywhere from 5 to 10 in each session, twice a week. That's 10 to 20 a week. That gives us all the training volume flexibility that we need along with different performance elements. We can pretty much hit every lifter's maximum recoverable volume. And it gives us a training frequency that will allow most people to maintain about the best possible muscle protein synthesis uptime they're going to get every week, which is probably only going to be about 48 hours. Because simply put, for a non-novice lifter to get 48 full hours of muscle growth, they actually need a fairly high threshold of training. And you're just not going to do that 3 times a week for more than maybe 1 muscle in their entire body, like 1 weak link. So because of that, that's ultimately what you're going to be limited to. So it will generally allow you the total training volumes and frequency that are going to maximize muscle growth will allow you to program multiple performance elements inside of a single week. So realistically, because there's so much experience by so many coaches doing it, it gives you a lot of material to work with. And if you're training all of your clients that way, or you yourself only run that sort of modality, it allows you flexibility basically for the rest of your life in training people, with only having to adjust individual days as you go. All right, guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.